Welcome back to another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is David Doss. He's a polyglot, world traveler, blockchain fund manager based in New York City. David, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on the show, Vince.
Absolutely. So having the notes that you're a polyglot, when I look at your LinkedIn, I don't see that so much. What languages do you speak?
Yeah, English, German, Russian, can speak, read, and write, modern standard Arabic, and then I actually a number of dead languages, including Latin, ancient Greek, and then smatterings of some others, including a bit of French, a bit of Spanish.
Smatterings, good word.
Yep.
Um,
Word of the
and
day.
I noticed that you went to UC Berkeley, 4.0 cumulative GPA, very good on you. And then you did a master's in Germany. Are you like German American, something like that?
No, yes and no, I guess, by ancestry. So, multiple generations back. But then kind of have a somewhat of a family tradition of a bit of studying in Germany. It's something my father did, my grandfather a bit as well. So, kind of, I guess, getting back to some roots. Plus, it also from a kind of that nomad capitalist perspective of going where you're treated best. World class educational system with that's super international, one of the most international education systems in the world. That's also at low to no cost. So
In Germany.
in Germany, for example, in a lot of places, you go to some really top universities in, nationally ranked universities there and internationally ranked for, at the time anyway, somewhere between 500 euros and 1,000 euros a semester in terms of the tuition
Yeah, that's not bad. Even for
fee.
non-European citizens?
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're used to thinking, say, in the United States. I went to UC Berkeley, for example, and the amount of money that I paid as a California resident at the time was about, gosh, half or less than half what out of state would pay, which in
Right.
turn was half or less than half of what international would pay. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
Germany just says, "This is the costs. Come on, come on."
Mm. I didn't know that. I mean, I've heard things with like Argentina does that too, where they had like
Mm.
free education for anyone from like any
Mm.
country. It was kind of insane. I think
Yeah.
Malay kind of got rid of that, or they're phasing it out. And in Europe, I know a lot of people who get European citizenship by ancestry. They
Mm.
can go study in Europe for free. But I kind of knew that
Mm.
there was some ways where you could slide into Europe as an American and get university basically for free.
Yeah, it really depends on the country. So there's as at least at the time that I was really looking into this, there wasn't a EU wide sort of a policy. Really depends on where exactly you want to go.
So I guess the big thing you do these days is all things crypto blockchain, right? You're the founder of something called the CKC Fund, which I would love to hear about. Is that where you spend the majority of your time?
Yeah, that's correct. So my team and I are focused on digital asset fund management and blockchain program management, consulting and advisory. Those are kind of our two core areas.
And so people told me I had to speak with you. You'd be a great person for the podcast. And you do a lot of things, right? You're kind of like a jack of all trades kind of guy. I do want to hear about the fund, and we'll get to that in a second. I'm just curious about as sort of a autodidact and I guess jack of all trades type of guy. How do you sort of do you find you have trouble branding yourself? Because I feel like everyone kind of needs to have a thing, but you have a lot of interests. I also have a lot of interests. I wrestle with
Mm,
this too in terms of,
mm.
you know what I mean, dealing with that paradox of niching down to be useful in the job market, I guess, but then also having a lot of interests and communicating that as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Certainly, I think different people have different kind of tendencies. I would agree that I have a broad range of interests. I think that the important thing to me is to be focusing on where where I would say a couple of those core interests can really best meet purpose and where they can best meet market demand. So if you think through, there are a couple of kind of relevant points there. I mean, one is that if you think through that kind of red ocean, blue ocean strategy sort of a perspective, one of the most commonly advised ways to kind of create a new blue ocean is to kind of hyper focus on a specific area where it's almost so specific that it's general in a way where you take certain categories and mix them together. So it's not just jumble everything at once, but strategically adding 2 to 3 areas that separately would be red oceans and
Uh-huh.
adding them together could become a blue ocean. So an example
Yeah.
of that I would say is something like crypto. There are several areas which are really a red ocean in crypto. For example, I would never
And
want to
sorry,
go
dude, can I
open.
stop you there? What is red ocean? Blue ocean is like a brand new market, right? Or something?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Kind of full nerding out on terms that might be just less common. So that's a good question. So blue ocean is kind of that open market.
Yeah, new
Red ocean
market.
is kind of a yeah. So it comes from this. I mean, it was the Blue Ocean strategy book. I forget the name of the author, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
fairly
yeah.
common. Kind of like
Like 10, 15-year-old business book. Okay. And then
yeah,
red
it's kind of
ocean is like a highly competitive market?
yeah, so it's kind of one of those like business school required reading sort of
Yeah,
books, I
yeah,
guess these
yeah.
days. But yeah, so blue ocean would be kind of there's smooth sailing. No one's in the water, sort of a thing. Red ocean is like there are sharks in the water. There's blood in the water, so don't go in the water, sort of a thing. It's kind of a really actually kind of a jarring graphic if you think about it, but yeah, so the idea there being, how can you find areas that are where there is a lot of competition in certain ways, but not in others. So an
Right.
example would be something like, okay, well, investment funds in general, to start a equities or like a stocks trading fund, there are so many of those out there, and it's so established and kind of operationalized that
Mhm.
yes, I mean you can go in and start a new one and kind of beat out the competition and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, you're going to have a really hard row to hoe to get um, to make significant progress on that. Whereas something like digital assets, that is a rapidly growing subsector of the asset management space.
Mhm.
And so to basically take something that is kind of tried and true and combine it with something that is new is an example of that kind of taking a red ocean and
Yeah, yeah.
kind of
They
turning it
they kind
into
of
a
say
blue
that
ocean.
that's what a lot of invention is,
Yeah,
or is like taking sort of two things that exist and combining them in a new way.
exactly.
Yeah.
So for example, I would probably not want to start a US based crypto exchange, for example. There are so many of those players out there right now, unless there was just some ludicrously good competitive advantage that a person had. Whereas, maybe starting a crypto exchange in another country, that has a lot less market adoption and kind of just cornering that market might be a good idea. That sort of
Mhm.
thing. So the other area to kind of answer your question in a different way would be uh, that kind of yeah. I mean, there's no way to kind of use all your skills all the time all at once, right? But does it ultimately come down to purpose and kind of general category? So for me, I'm really passionate about basically building new opportunities. Basically growing and preserving wealth was something that became very meaningful to me with my specific set of circumstances and stuff of helping to do that for myself, for my family, and then turning around and being able to provide that to other people in a way that provides them with more options, in a way that can lead them to a more international lifestyle, a more risk mitigated lifestyle, that sort of thing. It's
Mhm.
also something I was passionate about. So then it's kind of what are the building blocks of what are the kind of few skills that are most needed to focus on for that. And then I would say beyond that, kind of what is the role that I play in fulfilling that vision, which to me would be, say, mobilizing, where um, I have a lot of background in and I'm really interested in, and I would say I'm pretty good at mobilizing kind of the pieces across the board, the people across the board, etc. So that involves, say, things like the communication, but also the operations, where then something like language becomes very relevant, or a couple of other skills become relevant.
Hmm. Would you say you live an international lifestyle?
I would. I mean, gosh, I'm in New York probably about half the time, and the other half the time, who knows?
Okay. Tell me about that because crypto is obviously it's probably like the most remote first industry, right? It's like,
Mm,
you know what I mean? I think of any industry in the world,
mm,
crypto is the most remote. Why do
yeah.
you choose to be in New York?
Yeah. So, well, there are a couple of aspects there. One is one is that I guess more kind of personal side of things. It's just quality of life, my wife, her career, etc. The other is network, community, all these sorts of things. For me, being I would say kind of full fledged nomad of kind of new country every month, and never repeating sort of thing is not kind of the lifestyle that I am looking for. I kind of resonate a bit more with something like, say, that nomad capitalist preference of picking a
Yeah,
couple of places that are
trifecta.
kind of where I'm treated best, and
Hmm.
I'm maybe more in process of finding the other legs of that three-legged stool, perhaps. But
Mm.
another way of answering that um, would be also, I mean, in terms of uh, I would say for me, from a professional standpoint, there's a question of going where most relevant clients are. So, for example, I travel to a lot to Europe, to the Middle East. These are, in specific with digital assets, with crypto, they talk about this kind of new Silk Road in the perspective of the kind of the silk trade a couple hundred years ago,
Mm.
sort of a thing. But basically, that these kind of smaller nation states, largely in more emerging markets, are where there's kind of the most market opportunity. So, ultimately, I'm in a very personal, kind of high touch environment where relationships are very important. So I want to be going not just where it's kind of most exciting for me on a kind of a tourism level, but where it's most relevant to meet um, the right kind of people that I can best serve.
Hmm. So tell me about the CKC fund. Like, do you guys manage assets? Do you have AUM or you do something different?
Yeah, so our fund management team currently has around $5 million in assets under management across the board, and yeah, we basically uh, provide digital asset management services, which ranges from uh, basically situation to situation.
Okay, 5 million AUM. And what's kind of the model there? Is it like a classic 2 and 20? I bet it looks a little different for the crypto market.
Well, it really depends on the vehicle in question. Is this a fund? Is this a kind of a direct relationship with a client? These sorts of things. But in general, it I would say that keeping things, uh, well, simply put, if it's more passive strategies, then often it will be kind of lower on management and or lower on performance fees. Whereas if it's more active, then it could be higher on both because um,
Mm.
there's more expenses and more overhead,
So
as
what, you
well
don't
as
like commingle the money at all? Like it's like totally separate or?
it depends. So we have some there are situations where there's a kind of a, let's say, a collective investment vehicle involved. There are other situations it's more individual. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So the tagline on the tagline, but on the LinkedIn it says, "I help provide wealth management and high net worth wealth managers and high net worth individuals with diversified risk mitigated exposure to the global cryptocurrency market."
Hmm.
So how do we do that? How do we make it diversified and risk mitigated?
That's an important question. So a couple of ways, but broadly speaking, um, our um, our conception of the markets and our kind of overall thesis is that digital assets are special just like any other asset class. So what I mean by that is that uh, and fundamental and technical analysis, kind of core asset evaluation needs to apply. Core financial principles need to apply. So, for example, and maybe another way to explain that would be talking through what some of the pitfalls have been in the space. Some people have said, "Oh, I'm just going to buy this one asset and then hope for the best," sort of a thing. And they might do that in digital assets, but they'd be a lot less likely to do that in, say, the stock market. Of just buying, I don't know, a certain stock. Don't want to name names, but just buying a certain stock and sticking with that and hoping for the best is what some people have done in the digital asset space, and a lot fewer people do in the stock market. Another way of looking at it would be, say, um, setting up uh, kind of disciplined frameworks. So what we often will do is we will conduct that fundamental and technical analysis. We'll then build out a diversified portfolio, which, to answer your question, there are a lot of components to that. So one is diversification across different use cases, things like smart contract platforms versus true currencies that are designed to be kind of a medium of exchange versus decentralized file storage. Let's say blockchain for AI. Uh, the list goes on. Somewhat similar to how in a stocks portfolio you might have an allocation into healthcare, industrials, financial services, technology stocks, etc. Another component is diversification across market capitalization. So, like in a stock portfolio, you might have high cap, mid cap, low cap. Similar idea applies to the digital asset space. And then beyond that, the other thing would be uh, helping to ensure that there is true diversification in the sense of are is adding more into the mix truly making this portfolio more resilient. So, point being that there are a whole lot of cryptocurrencies and digital assets that just mirror Bitcoin all the time.
Hmm.
Where if you have 30 things that are doing the exact same thing as Bitcoin, it doesn't really help you. Whereas if you have 30 things that are each, have different price
Uncorrelated.
history and price potential, then you have a truly, kind of minimally correlated portfolio. Minimally correlated, not just amongst itself, but also minimally correlated with other markets that you might have invested in outside of digital asset space. So a lot of people, they'll have the vast majority of their net worth in things like real estate or stocks or bonds or cash, right? So how can that portfolio be low correlated in and of itself, kind of across the different assets that it's engaged with, but also low correlated to those kind of key anchors of a person's or an institution's wealth.
Hmm. So it looks like you have three or four things going on as well. So Chain BLX,
So
based
my
in
core, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
well, Chain BLX, also fractional CMO, CPO, CGO stuff. So
Yeah.
fractional
So the,
C-suite executive, I think is interesting. And And then also
Yeah.
you have something called Second River Capital, which seems to be real estate syndication, which I think is cool as
Yeah.
well. I guess I wanted to know maybe first, how does Chain BLX, um, how does that play into, is it like completely sort of distinct from the CKC fund or is it related?
Yeah. So my it's that's a an important point to make is my core area of focus is essentially fund management and program management as an overall how those pieces meet in the alternative investment space.
Hmm.
And within that, my core area of competency is the uh, blockchain and digital asset side of things. So from that, really, a significant part of what I'm focused on is really pointed towards that CKC side of the spectrum. From that, though, to your question, it touches on other key strategic areas. So, for example, I help provide, strategic support and advisory services to different companies, especially if I see there being a broader synergy with the overall ecosystem that I'm helping to build. Uh, Relatedly, CKC manages some vehicles that are in the Chain BLX ecosystem. So Chain
Hmm.
BLX is a network of alternative investment fund services and alternative investment fund vehicles. And so through that, support um, uh, we're able to support other investors, other fund managers by doing what we're already doing, by building out the infrastructure that we already have, the intel, etc. Um, and then from there, relatedly, a key use case um, around the let's say blockchain utility or adoption of blockchain would
Hmm.
be several areas related to real estate, such as buying and selling properties using cryptocurrency or tokenizing real estate and having that as a basically a liquid investment. So through that, we are my team as well as I are helping to support, um, let's say, other alternative investment use cases of real.
Hey guys, quick break from the podcast to tell you about job stacking. If you're a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then Rolf Haltza, author of Job Stacking, guarantees you'll be able to double your income by implementing his paycheck multiplication layering method. This is the exact system Rolf has used to take his own income and those of many others beyond 20K a month. With this method, Rolf contractually guarantees that you'll be able to double your income in 45 days. So, if you're interested in unleashing your earning potential and doubling your income, then click the link in the description and book a call with Rolf right now. Hey guys, quick break from the episode to tell you about BitRefill. BitRefill allows you to shop online and in person without banks, converting your crypto directly into merchant balance. We're talking gift cards to Nike, Amazon, Apple, Airbnb, Hotels.com, and many more, all paid for with crypto. BitRefill offers more than 10,000 gift card options in 180 countries all across Latin America, including Brazil, Colombia, Mexico, Argentina, El Salvador, and many more. You can also apply the code MyLatinLife at checkout to get 10% back on your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information.
Real estate is a significant one.
Hmm. So then the notes say it was established during the 2018 World Economic Forum in Davos, and that I guess every year you guys kind of run events in Davos. Have you been to I guess the Davos World Economic Forum,
Davos.
like the main event?
So I've been to Davos, gosh, 4 times at this point. I go to Switzerland a lot. There's a lot around alternative investments, digital assets. It's kind of one of the key drivers of that adoption. What Chain BLX does in that arena is what I would call business Davos. So a lot of folks
Business Davos.
business Davos. So a lot of folks will come, to Davos each January for the World Economic Forum to talk, policy, politics, economics. But
Uh-huh.
then, a lot of those folks who are already there, in more of their off hours, will be very interested in making, making business connections, making
Doing
deals,
deals.
and that's kind of often taking place kind of out and about in the town.
So you've been there the past 4 years slinging deals?
I've been there, last 3 Januaries in a row, and then some other another time, kind of
Dude, tell
off
me what
season.
this looks like. Like, are people you're
Yeah,
ski? Is there skiing involved? I mean,
yeah,
you got the park. People are pulling up in Escalades, and lots of free alcohol. I'm sure. What's going on? What's the vibe?
yeah. I mean, I guess. Well, so there's a couple ways to think through it. One analogy I use is it's kind of like, so I grew up pretty religious, and so for me, it's a lot of people they'll kind of come to church, but then they'll stay longer afterwards in the hall, kind of making friends, sometimes making deals, that sort of thing. It's kind of somewhat similar thing where it's kind of off hours, or outside the kind of
Yeah,
inner
it's all
sanctum,
about
so to speak.
networking. It's
It's
all
like a
about
lot
networking. It's
is
not
is
about
kind of
the.
it's kind of builds up a life in and of itself outside of what was maybe even kind of the original idea in a way.
Uh-huh.
So that's one thing to think about, or one thing to think through. The other way to think through it is picture something like the kind of like a Main Street, or like the strip in Las Vegas or something, where it's like most of the activity happening,
Uh-huh.
but you scale that down to the infrastructure of a 8,000 person village. So you basically have this one main road where there's just a whole lot of private events where the barber shop for that week becomes a pavilion for, I don't know, Facebook, for example, and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
and the let's say the I don't know, the what would be an art gallery becomes a private event center for the Wall Street Journal, or that sort of thing. So
Uh-huh.
you're going down the street, and instead of kind of like what you'd see in a small town, like the barber shop and the
Right. So
the
every
cheese
building
store,
is just
wine shop.
popping because there's only so many
Exactly,
buildings.
exactly. There's only so many buildings. You have an 8,000 person town that ends up having around 40,000 people there during that one week. So it's space is definitely hard to come by. It's also, you're literally bumping into people from around the world that are extremely accomplished, maybe famous, that sort of thing. You've got just people roaming the street who are
Roaming the
influencers,
street.
heads of state, all that kind of stuff.
So
Fortune
speaking of
500
roaming the
CEOs.
street, so I'm just curious, like, do you need a special invite, or there's some ambitious people that just like roll up to town, get an Airbnb, and try to schmooze? Obviously, like, there's probably like a whole mini culture around like getting invites to certain events and like, oh, I need to get in this event, like 3 events tonight. Which one do I choose? Maybe blah blah blah. I mean, how do you like? I feel like you kind of came into it as like a scrappy individual, being like, you know what, I'm just gonna go, we'll see what happens. Like, I'm gonna try to score some invites, talk to some people, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like you're kind of coming from it from the entrepreneurial, scrappy side of things.
Well, I came into it by helping people that were doing good things there, basically, and becoming part of a community, I would say. But yeah, I mean, there's and it really kind of checked out with a lot of things I was doing around, like I said, Switzerland. I speak fluent German. I'm heavily involved in digital assets, all that sort of stuff. So there were kind of a number of let's say direct and indirect ways that all kind of fit together. But yeah, I mean, there are people who come, just for the private events, the side events. But even that being said, I mean, these are all the private events are exactly that. They're private, so they're for private interests, and ultimately, in many cases they have guest lists, etc. So then there's kind of that larger question of, you know, uh, is your name on the guest list, or
Yeah, it
and
must be
or
it must be
yeah.
insane guest list stuff.
Yeah, so and then there are ranges of events. There are things, especially more kind of during the day, that's more maybe kind of open to the public. talks, seminars, meet and mingles. More in the evening, especially, could be more kind of invite only, kind of very small guest lists with kind of some really kind of epic scenarios going on, I guess.
Who's your number one sighting? Your number one like handshake?
Oh, it's kind of I'd rather not say. It's kind of one of those things where people go and kind of just go there to not want to have to deal with kind of being, with press or with
For
kind of
sure.
getting kind of jumped on, so to
But
speak.
there's mad press, isn't there? Isn't like all kinds of journalists?
Well, there's press out and about on the street, but they're not. If they're not invited to an event, they're not invited to an event.
Hmm.
And yeah, so it depends on the event. Is it something more like a talk, or is it something more where people are just there to sit back, have a drink, and get to know people that are relevant to their goals and interests.
Hmm. And you've been to about 70 countries, right?
Yeah, more or less.
How did that come about? Was that something that you did some backpacking trips, or you traveled a lot as a kid, or you made a explicit effort to do that, or how'd you get to the 70 plus countries?
That's a good question. Sorry, real quick. I think your white micro or cord is kind of pushing up and crackling your other one.
Oh, is
Yeah,
it correctly?
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, we all have our own. Like, I got a whole, gosh, I have a whole pile of wires here on my end. So
This is a new
got
setup
that
I'm
whole,
trying, isn't
yeah.
it?
But what was I going to say? So yeah, I mean, with that, I mean, I do have in some kind of, let's say, general goal. I'd like to go to all the countries of the world before I die. But that in and of
Same.
itself is kind of, it's not kind of. I'm not just going to go somewhere just to go somewhere at the same time in a way. So it's got to be, kind of move down the list of, what's the most personally interesting to me, what's the most professionally relevant to me, that sort of stuff. So I do go back a lot to a lot of different places. I mean, I've to been to the UK, largely more for kind of combination of personal and business for, gosh, I want to say about 4 or 5 times in the last year or so. Same thing with, a couple of different spots in the Middle East and Europe,
Hmm.
that sort of thing. But yeah, kind of that combination of kind of maybe wanting to have that kind of total absolute value at some point or another, but also not being in too much of a hurry and having it be about the journey is kind of how I think about it.
We've actually had a lot of people on the podcast, not a lot, but we try to have people on the podcast that have been to every country in the world. So we had
Oh, right on.
Thor Peterson. He was the first person to go to every country in the world without flying. He did it all
Oh, wow.
like by land and boats and stuff.
Wow.
We had a bunch of people that did that. So I love this idea of going to every country in the world. We had on Rick
Mm,
Gazarian from Counting Countries, who actually
mm,
interviews every other person that's been to
nice.
every country in the world. It's
Nice.
a little meta thing there. Um, what was I going to ask next? Tell me about the Middle East thing a bit, right? So you said you kind of got modern standard Arabic down.
Yep.
Probably a very good place to go fundraising for crypto asset management type stuff. Or what's the angle with your interest in the Middle East?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's a combination of things. And I studied, I have probably about the equivalent of a bachelor's degree in modern standard Arabic, but it's such a difficult language for native English speakers that, I would not say I'm anywhere near fluent, but I can speak, read, and write. Um, there's also kind of the larger question at play of, um, eh, what was I going to say? Larger question at play of that modern standard Arabic not even really being what a lot of people speak on a day to day basis.
Right.
So
Nobody
it kind of,
speaks it, right? So
yeah, I mean, there's
you have to learn like MSA and choose a dialect. Some people say learn
exactly,
the Egyptian dialect because it's the most understood. Some people
yeah,
say do the Lebanese type of
yeah,
Levantine
yeah.
dialect.
Depends on your priorities, sort of a thing. But yeah, I think the scenario or the analogy that makes the most sense to me is that it's kind of like how Latin was with other Romance languages, French, Spanish, Italian, etc. In the Middle Ages, where kind of everyone spoke Latin at kind of the educated class level, kind of the legal system,
Sure.
the
Priest.
politics, the economics, the religion. But then on a day to day basis, no one really spoke it in the street, sort of a thing, and it's kind of very similar in that regard with modern Standard Arabic versus the dialects. But yeah, I mean, in terms of kind of your kind of the core of your question of, I guess, why. I mean, was something that I was just generally very interested in from a fairly early age. Studied Arabic, Islamic studies, in university pretty extensively. Beyond that, it's also something where I'd say the Middle East in general, but specifically the Gulf Coast countries, such as say, the UAE, probably most notably, are very very bullish on kind of developing, into emerging technologies,
Hmm.
alternative assets, these sorts of things, and have made just an incredible amount of progress in those areas. In terms of kind of the larger thing to be considering, though, is that I think that the driving force of that is a understandable and I think laudable desire to really kind of create more and different value in the local economy. So I think that a lot of folks who just show up expecting for say funding for their let's say California-based startup aiming to mostly serve Americans, might end up being disappointed that it's ultimately, there is interest there and there is capital there to really invest into emerging tech and innovation, but it's also I think very understandably so innovation that ultimately people want to have coming back to benefit them.
Sure. Random question. How did you build up your LinkedIn? Because you've got to, I guess, 12,000 followers. You're a top LinkedIn voice. Do you have a LinkedIn strategy? Like, do you post every day? This kind of thing?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there are a couple of different things to be thinking through there. I mean, one is I do a lot of I'm on a lot of podcasts. I speak at a lot of events, these sorts of things. So ultimately, I'm sharing original content. I think LinkedIn is in general very definitely punishes outside content in a broader sense. I mean, it's not like you should
What do you mean
never.
if you link out?
Yeah, if you link out, I mean, that's something where I'd say, don't like. It's not like you should never link out or whatever, but just as an example, if you write an article in LinkedIn, or if you upload a video, or an audio clip in LinkedIn natively, that's something where by and large you're going to be a lot better off. Another thing is just thinking through, kind of the calculus of it all. That's something like, a lot of people just ask for likes because it's the easiest thing. But if you get, for example, a comment from from a friend or colleague or just anyone in general, it's worth, I believe, roughly three times the kind of points value of a like. So
Right.
if you're genuinely engaging in a dialogue, if I message you because I know that you're interested in, we just talked about, I don't know, digital assets in the Middle East, and I published an article about digital assets in the Middle East, and I asked for your thoughts on it. And you ask me a question, such as something that you asked right now, and I answer that question, and maybe we have a little bit of a conversation going, and then that benefits someone else, and they say thanks for that question. It's, I mean, really kind of mirroring organic,
Right.
you know,
Shares and comments.
or
So you're saying
exactly.
you create content that you think favors shares and comments versus likes,
I
and you try to.
Less so. I guess more of the question being, I think sharing that content with relevant people who are going to be genuinely interested in it and encouraging a dialogue around it is, I would say, something that is going to drive some value. Beyond that, let's see, what are kind of some other core areas there?
How often you
Yeah, I mean,
post?
so also I post. I post something just about every day, and I post some semblance of original content, be it an interview, an article, things like this, on average 2 to 3 times a week. And I've been doing that for years and years. To your
Years and
point,
years, every day.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and then beyond that, I'd say also, searchability, just, driving kind of natural inbound traffic for, the right kinds of keywords that you have, you know, there's just like a website. I mean, there's SEO, kind of, uh, considerations around a LinkedIn profile
Hmm.
that I think are important to think through, and that's going to be really dependent person to person. But what are the things that you want to be? What are the things that you're an expert in that you can help people with? That sort of stuff that they're then going to search for and find you. Maybe see that you're posting helpful content, follow you. The other part would be the kind of LinkedIn's content creator functionality, where a lot of people have that turned off kind of by default. Is like if
What's
it's
that?
something
What is
where,
that? Tell me about that.
yeah, so they have there's kind of the core mode, which is your
Like
how should I put
normal
this? Like
passive
just
job seeker
normal.
mode.
It's yeah, normal passive job seeker mode. And if you go to kind of
The
default
settings
someone with a
panel.
default profile, well, but yes, that too. But if you go to someone's profile and you see that their first button on there is connect, and you don't see kind of their content on there, that means they're in normal mode. If they're in content creator mode, the automatic thing to do is to follow rather than to connect.
Ah,
And then it's also kind of some of the first things that show up are articles, posts, videos, etc. That are in that person's mode. And I think that's partly also just kind of a lower barrier to entry, that the number of people that want to follow you versus the number of people that are that kind of muster up the courage to connect with you and stuff like that is you're going to get more people that are going to be relevant and interested that way. And there's a limits to number of people that that you can connect with a week, and that
right.
can connect with you a week, whereas there are far fewer on the following.
That makes sense. And you can't like pre-schedule LinkedIn posts, or can you? Is there a way?
Um, you can. The I think keeping automation to a minimum is something that I think is very LinkedIn is very sensitive to. Um, there are tools like gosh. Buffer, Hootsuite, those sorts of things.
Uh-huh.
It's easier to do than say Instagram, where Instagram's kind of the notorious one that's kind of the most manual on the posting, but it's also kind of a lot more conservative than something like a Twitter, which is just like kind of a lot of Twitter is just kind of all automated.
Hmm. And do you use one of those tools? Because we're big, we're biggest on Twitter, by the way.
Mm,
Twitter's our biggest platform. Love it.
mm,
It's hilarious. It's amazing.
mm,
And people tell me I should get into LinkedIn. We
mm,
created an account and stuff, but made some connections or whatever. But
yeah.
not too crazy.
Uh,
But I just haven't kind of. I don't know if I haven't found the time. I experimented a couple times where I like
mm,
copy pasted something I tweeted on Twitter that did well and
mm,
put it on LinkedIn. Really
yeah.
didn't get too many views or anything or likes,
Yeah.
but I mean, obviously, probably different types of content work.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, one thing I would say, just kind of in general, is consistency over long term is whether or not it gets you in the top voices program or not is going to be a good way to go. But if you're specifically, to be honest, I was never gunning for top voices. It just kind of, I woke up one day and was like, oh, I guess that's a thing now.
Hmm.
But when I did, I do kind of am connected with a couple of different people in that, and basically, as I understand kind of the stats and stuff, LinkedIn brings in about 500 people a year out of their total active users, which there's about a billion active
What does
users
that
out
mean?
there. So it
Brings in
is.
500 people a year. What do you mean?
Um, so the people that get added into the Top Voices program every year, like the net
Oh,
new
only
people added in,
500. Wait, wait, wait. You're
because
telling me there's only
it
500
may
top voices a year across the
it
whole
may
website?
it may have changed, but that's the data that I'm seeing out there. It's either
What?
depending on
That
what's
seems
mentioned.
really
It's
low.
either, I believe they've expanded it a bit where it's more like 500 per quarter, if I'm not mistaken. But it is a very low number. So point being, if the bar to get to that is different and also statistically harder than getting to say Twitter verification. So if your goal is simply a verification, then I wouldn't kind of bank on that on something like LinkedIn. Whereas the path to getting something like that on Twitter is a bit more straightforward and a little bit perhaps also a bit more achievable. So just things to be considering. This is all I meant.
Yeah, on Twitter, I don't even know if verification's a thing anymore, right? I think you just pay and you get your check.
So yeah, who can, I can't even keep track because they had different types of verification where it was paid versus unpaid and all that. But yeah, at least the way it was back in
Huh.
the day was perhaps a bit different. That's fair. I'm not as active
Okay.
as I could be on Twitter.
Yeah, I think I mean, I'm wondering because we've had almost 200 guests, and I'm wondering. I
Mm,
know Chase Warrington. Random shout out to Chase
mm,
Warrington. He's a top voice on
mm,
LinkedIn for remote work stuff,
mm.
and he's all about remote work. And he has the podcast.
That's a
The
good point
name's
actually as
escaping
well.
me. Go ahead.
So there's yeah, well, just to kind of piggyback on your point there, there's kind of two different things to be considering there. One is their overall Top Voices program, which is the kind of blue badge. That's what I'm talking about. Then
Hmm.
there's the yellow light bulb. So there's the blue in badge, and then there's the yellow light bulb badge. So
Okay.
the Top Voices for a specific topic is something that I think is also to your point. That's a great place to kind of start, where
Mm.
basically answer category specific questions in an area that you're passionate about and get some good engagement on that. Where if you're consistently getting upvotes, comments, likes, comments, whatever on your kind of category specific Q&A topics that you're providing answers to, then that's the fastest way to get sort of some level of a badge on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think Chase is an actual top voice. It
Mm,
says Chase Warrington is part of the Top Voices program,
right
an
on,
invitation only group of experts across the professional world.
right on.
There you go.
Go Chase.
Go Chase. So basically, you don't use Buffer or HubSpot or anything, eh? You just do it yourself.
I have I have Buffer for like posting schedules, so I create I create content and then I put it out into a calendar so that I don't have to be posting all the time. But in terms of engagement, a lot of pretty much all of that is manual, where
Responding.
basically comments, etc. Yeah,
Okay, so what do you mean you put it in a calendar? You're using one of the softwares to do it?
like a content calendar that can publish things out. Yeah.
And
So
what
like I
works
have
well on LinkedIn? Like I've heard like text only doesn't work too well. The photos work really like a photo with accompanying text works really well. Or what content types are you seeing work well on LinkedIn right now?
yeah, I mean, I think having a mix in general is a good idea.
Definitely.
I try to have a mix of articles that I've written, or the videos such as, or audio recordings, things like that. For example, with something like this, could potentially cut this up into some bite-sized insights to then share. Tag you, uh, the My Latin Life community, that sort of thing, where it's kind of more of a bite-sized share among communities. I've seen that work quite well as well. Generally, if you are putting in a kind of a native video, I would say best to do no more than a couple minutes because people's attention spans will drop off pretty dramatically after about a minute 30 or 2 minutes max.
Okay, so a mix of content types, and what would be that mix? Like, if I gave you a brand new account, I said build this shit. What kinds of mix of content are you gonna do?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, articles, short form video, short form audio, uh, images, perhaps posting cards with an image that has text in it, where really kind of the point is the text, but
Ah,
there's a bit more of a visual cue,
it's not a
that sort of
meme.
stuff.
Like it's like a card, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Like they call them Twitter cards on Twitter, so I don't know, LinkedIn cards on LinkedIn.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah. We do a mix too. Like if you look at our Twitter, like we really do a mix of like I'm not sure how familiar you are, but like quote tweets and
Yep.
picture tweets and text only
Yep.
tweets, blah blah blah.
Right on.
Cool. Little mini LinkedIn master class
Yeah.
lesson type of thing. Do you
Yeah.
talk? Is this something? Do you talk to people too about LinkedIn and building your top voice LinkedIn
To be
strategy?
honest, no. I mean, this is the first time that's really come up. So kudos to you to, yeah, creating some original thought leadership content here. Yeah,
Okay. And as we get to wrapping up, if people wanted to hear more from you, you said you've done some other podcast appearances in the past. Which
yeah.
ones should people check out?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's see. I would say. I mean, I have. There are so many, but I would say potentially easiest way to get kind of some insights into some of my interviews and stuff would be to follow me on LinkedIn, which is where I'm most active, as well as to follow CKC Fund on LinkedIn. We post newsletters, market commentary. We also post interviews, recordings, stuff like that. Another place though is kind of a central repository would be CKC's YouTube. So there are a bunch of different kind of the full length form panels that we've helped organize, digital Davos panels. Some of them include some in-person stuff in Davos, uh, like in Switzerland live, as well as some other
Oh
kind of
yeah.
local sessions as well. So that would be, I'd say, YouTube for long form, LinkedIn, or like my David Doss LinkedIn or CKC LinkedIn.
Okay. David Doss, Digital Davos.
Yeah, quadruple D. Yeah,
Triple D.
yeah,
LinkedIn's or the YouTube's cool. I found it immediately. Good stuff.
right on.
Um, let's get to wrapping up. I think we both have a
Yeah,
hard stop. Thank you for the excellent conversation today,
likewise.
Mr.
Thanks.
David Doss. Why don't you kind of take a minute and share a message with the audience where they can find you, or really anything you want.
Yeah, so definitely, I'd encourage you to check out some of, my personal LinkedIn content, as well as CKC's, the CKC YouTube. I'm glad you asked about that as well. We also, feel free to send me an email. David at ckc.fund would be the fastest way to get a hold of me via email. And beyond that, you can also you can also. I mean, I'm somewhat involved in some other channels, but I guess wherever you're most comfortable, you're most welcome. And I guess as a last thought, would just encourage you to think through these topics we talked about in the digital asset space of asset evaluation, diversification, ongoing research, rebalancing. Basically, develop systems that can work for you in the long term, or else work with people who can help develop them for and
Love it. So this has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, my guest today, David Doss, LinkedIn, top voice, blockchain expert, polyglot, much more. Thank you for joining us, David. Thank you to the audience for listening. And wherever you're listening to this, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, please make sure to subscribe. We put out 2 episodes a week with amazing guests, and you won't want to miss an episode. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Vince.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Bit Refill. BitRefill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. Visit bitrefill.com for more information. This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Job Stacking. Introducing Rolf Haltza's Paycheck Multiplication Layering Method, a revolutionary approach that redefines the traditional career path. This is Rolf's new Done With You program, where he'll work with you to implement job stacking for yourself. With this method, Rolf contractually guarantees that you'll be able to double your income in 45 days. So, are you ready to step out of the shadows of job insecurity and step into a world of career abundance? Then just click the link in the description of this episode, book a call with Rolf, and start walking the path of unleashing your earning potential with job stacking.